So, tired of always getting shot down or shot at when it comes down to fighting in combat on Elite Dangerous? Want to actually get well protected? Well, don't worry. In today's video, that is exactly what we are talking about. Hello everybody, Accureye here, or you can call me Commander Accureye on Elite Dangerous. And today I am talking about, or I'm going to be talking about, defending yourself and making yourself a much better, well-prepared ship in defense on, Elite Dangerous. Now, while this is not going to guarantee that you will survive, this should hopefully help you understand the formula and just in general understand how to actually be stronger and more prepared for fights in Elite Dangerous. Now, you're going to see here that I have reactive compost. This is by far my favorite compost, as you can see. But most people start with the basic alloy, lightweight alloys, which of course are 80% hull boost, negative 20% kinetic damage, thermal resistance is at 0, and negative 40% when it comes to explosive resistance. Now don't worry, I will explain all of that as we get forward, and I will explain the formula. Most people look at just the ship integrity entirely. And while looking at just the ship integrity entirely may actually help you to some degree, it's not guaranteed that you will survive, let alone actually be able to hang out with, with the basic. Now you will see that in this video I don't have the reactive or the mirrored compost, but as you can see here, I'm looking at the reinforced alloys, which give you 152% hull boost, 20% kinetic resistance, negative 20%. Thermal resistance is at 0, and explosive resistance is at negative 40. Now you're probably, and then of course you got the military, which is the same as the reactive compost with 250 hull boost, but it has a negative 20 on the thermal, on the explosive and kinetic. Now you're probably thinking, Accureye, why would you ever take the reactive compost? Well, the main reason we take the reactive compost is, while it doesn't exactly have anything, it doesn't have exactly positive thermal resistance, it is the best compost to take in fights. Why is this? Well, as we go back to it, you'll notice that as we go back to, and then there's also the mirrored surface, which is 250 hull boost, negative 75% kinetic, 50% hull thermal, and negative 52 explosive. But why do I take the reactive compost? Well, with a positive, and I'm going to say positive 25% hull boost. This is a positive 25% kinetic resistance hull boost, a positive 20% explosive hull boost, and with a negative 40% thermal resistance. You're probably thinking, but Accureye, isn't that kind of dumb? Isn't that going to get me more than likely killed faster? And you'd be wrong, because here is where the formula comes in when it comes down to building a defense, and just in general being able to determine if you can survive. Most people don't realize that there is a bit of a survival rate. There is a bit of a thing that allows you to determine if you can truly survive. It's kind of a formula, if you will, and in many ways it is a formula. So the formula goes: you've got your normal hull boost. Consider your integrity your health. So at the point I have 115 health. This is my X health. This is basically my X health. And with that X health, I can basically survive for 115 damage, or 1,115 damage. 1,115 damage is my total health from the hull. Now, this is where the formula comes in when it comes to defense. Your kinetic damage is your kinetic weapon minus, and then add based on the resistance of your kinetic damage. So in the case of my for instance, guns, for instance, multi-cannons, it means that while I am taking negative 20%, negative 20% with just military compost, I am basically taking, in the case of my hardpoints, and my hardpoints basically do about 12.8 damage. Do about 12.8 damage per hit. In the case of my hardpoints, because I'm doing 12.8 damage per hit, if I had the negative 20% kinetic resistance, this means I'm taking an extra 2.5 damage. This is an extra 2.5 damage, which means that in total, you're really taking 15.3 damage every hit. So every time you're hit with a multi-cannon, if you have negative kinetic resistance, you are taking 15.3 damage per hit. Now, and you can understand that with thermal and, of course, explosive. With the thermal resistance, of course, it is, in the case of my beam lasers, for instance, in my ship, I'm doing about 12.5 damage per second. So every hit is 12.5 seconds. If I had the negative 40%, which I do, now, if you have the 0%, you're taking 12.5, 0, zippity doo-dah, that is your damage. Now, with the 12.5, thermal, if I was to, of course, add that to, the 40% resistance that I have, that means I'm taking I'm taking about 17.5 damage per hit with thermal weapons. Now, that's pretty bad. But with engineering, and this is why engineering is important, that thermal resistance can go into a positive, which is why I take the reactive compost, because it is so much better to make sure you have a positive. Now, what does the positive mean? What happens if I have a positive resistance to something like kinetic weapons? Well, in that case, for instance, as you saw with my reactive compost, seeing with my reactive compost, I was taking a 25% resistance to my own kinetic weapons. As you know, my kinetic weapons do about 12.8 damage per hit. With that 25% damage, on the positive side, you're minusing how much damage you're taking. So you basically minus the amount of damage that you're taking, which in this case, I'd only be taking 9.4 damage per hit with a positive immunity. So, as you can see, this is why it's so important to have a positive. Now, in the case of like this explosive, as you can see, if the mine launcher, for instance, hits me while I'm in a a negative mode, for instance, like let's take the mirrored compost, for instance. The mirrored compost, for instance, does negative 50% damage. You guys saw that it was 44 damage right there. So, if we were to put 50% damage, that means every hit from mine would do about 66 damage, everybody. And even in like, for instance, the 40% range, you're adding an extra 17 damage per hit, which means that in total, you are getting hit by 61 damage, everybody. 61. Now, you may be thinking, Accureye, why do I have to know this math? Why do I have to know the formula? The reason is because this is a basic RPG formula in many ways. In many ways, this is basically RPG formula. And the RPG formula, for those of you who don't know, is basically we take how much a raw damage weapon does. For instance, if a damage weapon does, for instance, 250 raw damage. Now, let's say you're wearing heavy armor. Let's say the heavy armor does, 60% damage. So, at 250 damage, it takes away, it's a positive of 60% damage. That means every time you get hit by it, you minus 150 damage. That means in general, you're taking 100 damage every single time. Every time. Every time, man. Every time you are taking 100 damage when you get hit by with the armor that you're wearing. And that's exactly what the what I mean by, it's so important to have a positive kinetic resistance, a positive kinetic immunity, if you will. And this is why, mirrored surface combos is not very good. I would recommend staying away from it because you can't really buffer it out. And even though I've had people like a good streamer of mine, Vile Nikosi, claim military grade combos is the best, it is terrible because you can't buffer out kinetic resistance and explosive resistance. I mean, at the end of the day, let's face it, you want to engineer your ship to be as resistant as possible. And at the end of the day, that means you want to make it as positive as possible. And I mean, at the end of the day, that means that, going with heavy grade or whatever could be potentially good. But I mean, in many ways, lowering the amount of actual damage you take from it is the best thing you can do. Because at the end of the day, engineers, you may be thinking, oh, the more health I have, the less the longer I'm going to survive. And to a degree, that is true. But in many ways, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you can survive and take less damage when it's possible. So, for instance, if you can buffer out the thermal resistant, which is why I say go with reactive surface combos, because you can buffer out the thermal resistance. And when you do go with thermal resistant armor, sure, you're going to take more away from your explosive and kinetic resistance. But luckily for you, and this is the luckily for you, as you buffer out the explosive resistance, if you're lucky, you're not going to see too much of a degrade. You won't see too much of a degrade from your thermal and explosive resistance. In general, it just makes it much more likely for you to benefit from it, and that's exactly what you want to do. I mean, in the case of like heavy duty armoring and heavy duty explosives, you can get rid of you can positive the thermal resistance up to about 5%. Up to about 5%. Now, 5% isn't bad, but when you look at it, that means that you're going to have still a negative 35% damage increase. That means you're still going to have 35% damage increase, which really makes it to a point where it's like, well, what's the point of using heavy-duty plating if I can't or what's the use of heavy-duty plating if I still have problems buffering out the resistance, or getting rid of all those the problems, if you will. And that's exactly it. It's just simple RPG programming, simple programming in general. But hopefully this has helped you become a little bit more aware of your surroundings as far as being able to survive. Hopefully I've helped you make better decisions and in general just make you a better pilot. But remember, always take adventures, fly dangerously in many ways, and take this as a chance to really understand that, hey, now, of course, hull module reinforcements also help you. I would highly recommend hull module reinforcements. They help buffer out some of your damage, and you'll see here how when we go into my defense settings, you'll see here that with the hull module reinforcements, and you'll see it here, I have right here 32% kinetic resistance, 14% thermal resistance, and that's from engineering. That's engineering my shield. 50% explosive, and as you can see, I mean, you know, looking down at it, you can see I have a 35% buffer already just with hull reinforcements alone. So in general, it's not that bad to just consider taking on a chance to have one negative on your hand. I mean, in the end of the day, the amount of health you have does not matter if for any reason your opponent can just basically ignore your armor. And that's exactly what the negative does, is it ignores your armor. If it's in the positive range, you deflect or negate some damage onto the next attack, which of course in turn helps you survive longer. But with that being said, thank you everyone for joining me on this video. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit that like button, get subscribed, hit that bell notification because I know you want to know when my next video drops next. I am live on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/Accureye. You can join me there for something competitive, usually on Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'm planning to make this potentially a 6-day-a-week schedule, but I'm planning to try and work around a 5-day-a-week schedule once again. But with that being said, which will be Monday and Tuesday being 2 to 3 hour long streams, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday being 4 to 5 hour long streams, sometimes 6 hours depending on how I feel, and Sunday potentially being an up in the air bonus stream. But hopefully this has made you a better defensive pilot. Hopefully you've become learned a little bit about being defensive on Elite Dangerous. But thank you everyone for joining me on this video, and until the next one, this is Accureye, signing out and saying farewell everyone.